Hi, everyone. This is Erin Andy, your school library and site technology facilitator, and this is the last in our September series related to Google Sites. So, remember, we did session one, which the big takeaway was making sure you're using the correct Google links. And session two, the big takeaway was getting to make sure that the web pages, all have the appropriate type of content. And if you don't have content, you don't need that web page on your website. This is session three. Today is September 24th, 2020. I'll make sure this gets out for the next day since everybody's trying to get their Google Sites up for open house. But attendance, if you're doing this virtually, is https://tinyurl.com/GOMHS fall 2020 totals. Please notice which letters are capitalized. You can pin this or bookmark this because this will be where we take attendance for the entire semester for our totals PD sessions on Thursday. Okay. So, what are our objectives today? The learner will review and discover, a little bit of the review I kind of just did. Video making, inserting Google Calendars, and creating Microsoft 365 links. So, review of setting up your faculty Google Sites. Remember to get to them. They were pushed out to you by Mr. Gordon and/or myself. So you go to the waffle, the apps, and you find sites by going down here. This is the traditional way to get there. If you have all of your data synced and open, then perhaps when you go to glenoakshigh.com, you can go to faculty and faculty sites list. No matter what, this is where it will be housed, published for the world to see. So these are the two locations where you can go. Okay. Uh, I mentioned the review. Remember, one was about Google Sites for session one, and session two was really making sure that your web pages and the content were appropriate. One of the things you need for content is a video on your homepage. We have open house next week, so you do need to make a video using the template that was sent out by Mr. Gordon. To make your video, use Loom and set it up. If you need help, come by the library if needed. Okay. If you're comfortable with it, do it on your own. If not, you can come to the library and we can give assistance. But do remember that you do need a video for open house. And once you master the skill, this is something that you can do for your website, for Google Classrooms, YouTube, etc. Okay. So please come by and we'll help you make your video. Now, in our last session, we talked about the difference between static information and what I call dynamic information. And one of my goals for you with your Google site is to make a well balanced, content rich site that looks like you're updating it on a regular basis, yet, you're not updating on a regular basis. We all need things that are professional and clean. And if we're honest, we have tons of, balls to juggle in the air. And this does not necessarily need to be one of them at all the time if we take some steps. Okay. With embedding to add things that update on their own. One of the most powerful that you have the potential to do is to insert a Google Calendar or multiple Google Calendars into your website. If you are not aware, the moment you make a Google Classroom for your students, you also made two other things. One of the things you made was a Google Drive folder. That is kind of the behind the scenes where everything is being saved for the Google Classroom. And you also create a Google Calendar. Okay, so every time you put an assignment or a quiz or something of that nature into Google Classroom for your students, the calendar is being updated with those assignments. Okay, so that somebody could keep track of them. It is possible to take that Google Calendar and put it in your website at the appropriate location so that the public can see it. So, if you're having a conference with a parent or, a student later on and it's, well, I was not aware of, something, you could potentially say, well, you could be a guardian, guardian summaries in the Google Classroom. There's always parent teacher conferences. And also check out my website because the calendar is updating as the Google Classroom is being updated. One important thing though is just like we talked about in session one, going back to session one and session two, because session two was about making dynamic content. This definitely counts. Session one was about making the correct hyperlinks. And in Google Calendars, you have to remember the idea about making it public and then embedding. Okay. So remember, Google tries very hard to be private with its settings. The defaults are restricted to either just you or to people within the EBR district, the EBR domain. Google Calendar is no different. It is defaulted to only be visible to people who are in East Baton Rouge Parish School System. If you're going to put something onto the Google site, please remember that once again, you got to make it public or else it's not going to work. I did try just to see, and all I got was a gray box. Okay. And I've had that before. So I get it. It's not seen. My current one is set to public and it's working just fine on the website. So, give you an idea, if you do need a little extra support, don't forget that support.google.com is where you can get information. They do specifically have a section about calendar. So, here's calendar help create and manage a public Google Calendar. That's effectively what you're doing. Okay. How would you do that? First, you need to go to your calendar. Now, over here, when you go to Google Calendar, you can also access this through Google Classroom. I have many calendars. Every time a Google Classroom has been made, a new calendar formed. Okay. I actually need to go through and really weed these out. Some of these are a couple of years old. But to give you an idea, when you're looking at Google Calendar right now, the one that for me is bolded is my library aides for second period. They had a little bell ringer due for me today as a review. You see some other things, kind of ghosted out. That's because those are from other calendars. But let's say this is the one I want to put into a Google site because that is my library aids. That would be an appropriate thing for me to do. I check that one. Everything else is going to get unchecked. And notice the three dots that appear. I'm going to go to settings and sharing. Here's the name. You could give a description. You could set it to the proper time zone. It's for the East Baton Rouge Parish School System. I want you to notice something. I used this in an earlier Totals PD presentation. So it is set to make available to public. That is not actually the default. The default is make available for EBR schools. Okay. If using this, you need to set this so that it's visible to who you need it to be visible to, which in the case of a site is make public. Notice Google is trying to warn you you're doing something related to privacy. So it says making your calendar public will make all events visible to the world, including via Google search. Are you sure? If your goal is to put it onto the onto the site, you need to do that. So I do that. Remember, I didn't make the Google Classroom itself public to the world. I just made the calendar attached to it. Okay. Notice it now says get shareable link. It says with this link, only people you allow can access your calendar. Well, in that case, I want it public. You can also go further down and you'll see it as a calendar ID, like for web browsers. And then if you wanted to do it from the idea of an embedding code. All right. So then when I go to my Google site, as an example, this is one I currently have embedded. So today I had a clever meeting. I had some PD sessions, etc. Tomorrow I've got a meeting at 10. I actually need to add another one. I've got a meeting in the afternoon and library student workers. Okay. If I want to add one, I could use embed. I had that URL code that I copied. I also saw the embed code. I could also go down here where it opens up access to all of my calendars. Now, I can insert very quickly from this one. It's very easy. Just remember, if you don't set that public, it's not seen by the world. Okay? So if I do it, you'll find that one again. It was library aids second period. Insert. It's currently set with agenda, but I could do it by month and by week. I would probably personally put this on the page devoted to my library student workers, but to each their own. But now you have a functioning Google Calendar on your website. Please, to be on the safe side, just remember, log yourself out completely and then go to the school website and check it out. Or have someone else go do it, just to be on that's not in the district, so you know that it's correct. Okay? Trash that, and I'll go back to our presentation, which is creating Microsoft 365 links. Now, we talked about in our first session creating Google links. Some of you prefer Microsoft. Some of you have things that are in Microsoft for whatever reason. And while you could download and then upload into your Google Drive and create a Google link, there's no point. Microsoft 365 does the same thing as Google. Within reason, most of the cloud based services, Apple, I work in a program called Canva, at this point are very, very similar when it comes to share links. It's creating the right link for your audience and then creating the right access rights. Okay, so Microsoft 365 is the same thing I told you in session one for Google links, which is a correct link equals the type of link, i.e. the audience, and the access level, i.e. viewer, commenter, editor, etc. To show you, in case you have something in Microsoft, I have pulled up this document in my 365 account, right? And almost exactly like Google Drive, Google Docs and all of those, we have a share button here. We have a share button here. There's always Microsoft OneDrive. Um, and there you go, same setup. So let's try here. It's very, very similar with slightly a different look. Now here's the difference. Google is set up to be most restrictive as the default. Microsoft is the exact opposite. It's the most broad by default because notice it's anyone with a link can edit. So anybody in the world, district or no district, can see it. And on top of that, they can change it. All right. I did have a teacher 2 years ago who preferred Microsoft to Google, which was fine. And they ran into a problem because students were, let's just say, not appropriately changing her PowerPoints. Well, that is because the default link was anyone with the link can edit. All right. We want to change that. If it's a Google site, we still want the anyone, but in most situations. But in most situations, we want a view only situation. So I'm going to click. Notice it is going from most broad to most restrictive. So we go from anyone to people in the district to people who already had access to very specific people. We're going to keep the anyone with the link, but we're going to take off the allow editing. This makes it a view only document. Remember, Google actually has 3 access levels. It has editor, commenter, and viewer. This looks like on first glance that it only has editor and viewer, but it actually does have the equivalent of commenter, which is that you cannot actually change the document, but you can leave suggestions and comments. It shows up when you add the allow editing back on. But this becomes open review mode only. This is the equivalent of comment. Okay? But remember, on our Google site, we want anyone in most situations, but also in most situations, we want to make view only. All right. Now, one thing Microsoft has that Google doesn't have at the moment, which is kind of cool, is a couple of other little things. I can set an expiration date. Ooh, I'm in a crow. I got to turn on my, I got to charge up. Sorry. You can set an expiration date. So if you only want to give access on your website or to someone in particular access for a week, you can do that. You can set a password. This might be appropriate for something else to share in a minute that I might put on my website. I would like to put up some stuff for Microsoft up on my website for teachers, but if I set it with the anyone in EBR link, that includes students. If I don't want students, perhaps I'll set a password. Okay. And block download. All right. If you didn't want for some reason someone to download what the link is, you can block it. Okay. So that's Microsoft in a nutshell. Very, very similar to Google. Like I said, once you've done one, going to the other one, and then to other platforms, they're all very similar, just different perks. This one has the perk of the password and the blocking of the downloading, etc. But very similar comparison. Okay. So at this point, we are at the end of session 3. Please remember to mark your attendance even if you watch this virtually so that you can receive credit at the end of the semester. As of right now, we do give credit for ongoing things at the end of the semester. All right, so https://tinyurl.com/GOMHS fall 2020 totals. Okay. Um, please make sure that you're getting yourself ready for open house. And remember that while it's a lot of effort at this point, that effort, if you make your you take a little time with your website now, is something that could pay off in dividends with communication with your families, etc. Um, in a very long time. Oh, and before I forget, because I almost did, One thing I did want to show you, Microsoft. I mentioned there was something that I might want to put on my website, but it would be for teachers. As a heads up, this one's Sway. I do agree that Google and Microsoft have very similar platforms. There's Excel to spreadsheets, etc. But one thing that you don't see in Google as much, the biggest comparison, is this thing here called Sway. You guys, for open house, the official thing is a video. But many of us make brochures or we make newsletters or syllabus, things of that nature. Sway is a really, really nice program for making things like newsletters. Okay. So as you go further down and you're looking for content rich, but stuff you don't necessarily need to update, putting a newsletter, once a quarter or something to your parents or your students or the broader community might be a really good thing. But once again, using that correct link and correct level of access. Almost forgot that part. But remember, we are at the end of session 3. This is the end of September for Google. We'll be announcing our October stuff in just a little bit. Good luck with open house. Good luck with hybrid. Um, and if this is being watched next year, whatever the case may be, we survived it all. And yay us. So anyway, if you have any questions, please email me. It's EMURRAY. Please don't forget the A at ebrschools.org. Come by the library if you need assistance. Thank you so much.